You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we've decided we've had enough of cricket and we're going to refocus on the Premier League. Haaland at the double for City in the Manchester derby, and Nketiah unstoppable for the Gunners, and Pochettino under pressure after another Chelsea loss. But first, Ross, you're a Spurs fan. You must be thrilled, sitting top of the table, big Ange at the steering wheel. It's a great season so far.
Well, it's just classic, isn't it? You put an Australian in charge and they just start winning. So it's one of the things. They're going to win the World Cup and we're going to win the Premier League. So, viva la poste, Koglu.
Max, in all seriousness, it's the hope that kills you, which is pretty lucky because there was none for England before this game. What were your first thoughts on the cricket?
Well, it's funny you should say the hope that kills you, because there was a tinge, wasn't there, after England had got Virat Kohli for a duck, where you thought, well, maybe England are going to have some runs, a number of runs that they might actually be able to chase. And it was really foolish of everyone not to remember that the bowling attack that England were about to face on that pitch was about 3 times better than the bowling attack India were dealing with and struggling with. So it was never going to go well. But we all had a little bit, maybe, that we thought England might win. And we all saw what happened, so we can all be as disappointed as one another. The English, anyway. Obviously, everyone else continue laughing.
If you want an idea of how ridiculous this defeat was, if you go to Google right now and look up the England v India game, there's a win probability bar. It's still got England 0.5%. The AI cannot believe that England have lost this badly. Like that's pretty incredible. Which one of you two is doing the summary? Max, I guess.
Sure, I'll do it. So we were at Lucknow and I got to see what I wanted, which was India batting first and trying to set a total. And it didn't go that well to start with. What Chris Woakes needed, apparently, to perform well in India was a pitch that they'd borrowed from England and just transported over and dropped into Lucknow. They said they'd relayed the pitch. I didn't realise that was how they'd done it. But it worked. There was a bit of seam movement. He was bowling nicely, and India was struggling. They lost some early wickets, and it was 40 for 3 in no time. A bit of a steadying of the ship in the middle overs, and Rohit Sharma, of course, anchored the innings beautifully. And 229 for 9 was what India posted. England thinking, well, in the game here, great chance, and at 30 for none, absolutely still in the game. And then 2 wickets in 2 balls, and that was basically it. England crumbled. Ben Stokes swatting wildly at nothing. And then they just fell in a heap again, because that's what this England side do. They don't recover from adversity. They take adversity, they swallow it, and then they go to sleep.
Short and sweet. Like England's innings.
Like England's batting. There wasn't that much to cover, was there? So
here's what I think. Because I've heard a few different ideas about this already in the post-match stuff. I've heard the typical England fan angle, which is that these runs were very easy to knock off, and I've heard the cricket hipster view, which is kind of like you said, Max, that this score was actually quite good, and that England's bowling attack's pretty bad, and India's is pretty good, and they should have won. I, for once, Ross, I'm coming down on the BBC side. I think 229 chasing, even on a tricky pitch, should have been a pretty easy win for England. I know they're not in great form. Quite humiliating to lose by 100 runs if you're English.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you've got, as that they picked the team based upon experience, right? And what you saw here was none of the batting unit put their hand up and was just like, do you know what, I'm going to really take charge here. And we got to 30 for none, and then lost 4 wickets for 9 runs or something silly, and then just was just like, we just gave up. It was an absolutely abject performance, and I think that England went unchanged, which was interesting to see in the first place. David Willey again, probably being England's one of the better players when he's not really given the contract. And I think Joss Buttler coming out and saying, "Oh yeah, same old story." It's just like, that was not the same old story, really, is it, for England? Like, you've lost 4 other World Cup games, but you've been pretty good for the last 5 years, and it's just there's not really an excuse other than people not actually digging deep and being able to go, do you know what, I'm just going to bat normally. I I do think this Indian bowling lineup is absolutely exceptional. I think the pace battery that they've got is the best that they've ever had, and I think that when we've talked before around the playing your specialists and kind of being really good and just be like, India, you're the favourite. Don't always have your contingency. Don't have your Shardul Thakur kind of contingency in your back pocket because you're so worried about it. Go full throttle and you will probably be all right. And Mohammed Shami today, like the guy's brilliant. And when you've got Bumrah and Siraj and then Kuldeep's ball to Joss Butler, wow. Yes, I'm not surprised they lost, but Jack, you would have thought one or two of them might be able to bat for like 50 balls.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's the sort of manner of the defeat that's quite sort of ridiculous. I think, like the before the game, I don't think really anyone thought that England were likely to win. We thought it would take some miracle performances. I think that's basically what we said on our show on Friday. Yeah. But they actually got some of them from the bowlers. So the previously terrible bowling lineup all turned up together and kept India to a
fielded well
manageable
for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were on there.
Max, after the game, Joss Butler said he wanted answers on a postcard about England's batting woes, some solutions to England's batting woes. I'm not sure that a postcard is big enough for a solution, but where would you start?
I mean, firstly, that is not what you want to hear, is it, from your captain? What's going wrong? I don't know. If actually we could just crowdsource the answer to England's problem, that'd be great. There was an interview after the Sri Lanka game. Literally, they said to Matthew Mott, "What's going wrong?" And he said, "Don't know, mate." I mean, that's like what? That's a start, isn't it? What's going on behind the scenes? I think. So I mean, I said in the summary that what England's bowlers did meant that it would be particularly hard for England's batters, given the bowling attack they were going to face. But I do agree with you and what you say about that should be chaseable. 230 should be chaseable. It was a pitch that offered assistance to the bowlers. It wasn't like it was a minefield that was impossible to bat on. And at most turns, I do my best not to agree with Jonathan Agnew. But in this occasion, I do agree with Jonathan Agnew in the sense that if you just go out there and bat sensibly, bat properly, think about protecting your wicket and taking up some time, you can chase those runs. And what happened today and what happened, I think, quite a few times in this tournament, England have lost a couple of wickets and their response has been to madly slash at a random delivery and get out. There's not been any thought about how to rebuild the innings, how to put pressure back on, not just by being reckless or anything like that. It's just been all very confusing and muddled. I mean, Ben Stokes is probably a case in point. His wicket today, he obviously, it was a 10-ball duck. He couldn't get any rhythm, but that shot he played was awful. Johnny Bairstow had seen how David Malan got out trying to play a shot to a ball that was too close to him to play the shot he did, and then did exactly the same thing. There's model thinking, and these are players that they've been through enough cricket to know that they can play a different way, and they haven't done it. And I think it's like going back to sort of what I said the other day, in that they're trying to be aggressive, but they don't really know how to be aggressive other than just sort of randomly attacking a ball and not having a plan for when things are a little bit trickier. That's where I would start. But it's weird, isn't it? Because it's the same set of players for the most part. So you do have to wonder what's led to this behind the scenes.
Well, Owen Morgan on commentary was saying that there must be something happening kind of in the camp, which is quite a big thing for Owen Morgan to just come out and kind of completely actually speculate on. Right?
I'd imagine he knows the guys quite well as well.
Yeah, it's just like something else. Like something else is going on here, and there's also a bit of we talked last time where does blame lie? But England are in quite a luxurious position when it comes to white ball cricket, I think. But on the bowling front, I think we've obviously got limited resources there, but they're still useful enough. But from a batting perspective, we've got some of the best white ball players in the world. And yet here it felt like we've picked a team for experience on past glories. And if Dan Weston was on the show, he'd be saying that you need to take emotion out of that kind of piece. But yeah, it just feels like we didn't turn up with the right weapons.
I'd probably disagree with that slightly. I don't think that England have picked the wrong team. I mean, it might be, and I think we said this on another show that some of them are,
one tournament too far.
yeah, maybe they're a little old. Well, they are a little old. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But if you look at the top five plus Livingston, let's say, are you really telling me that Johnny Bairstow should be out and Phil Salt should be in? Because I think it's maybe right now, with hindsight, you're saying, oh, it would have been great if we had Will Jackson, Phil Salt.
Yeah, if they'd announced that squad and it was Phil Salt, Will Jackson, the only pair, the world would have gone crazy. People would have gone
or Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett are opening the batting. Like, they probably would have done better than we have seen England do. But I don't think you could logically have come to the conclusion that Ben Duckett and Zach Crawley or Will Jacks or Phil Salt would actually have been better picks prior to the tournament. I think Owen Morgan's theory about something wrong in the camp, maybe they're playing too much golf, maybe they're not practicing.
So someone's shagging someone's wife, so we're going to go full Wayne Bridge, John Terry.
I mean, maybe that's what's going on. What you could say, Jack, is that
maybe Chris Wokes has used his handsomeness and he's gone completely rogue. He's out of control.
Well, you got to use what you got, right? The thing you could say that England, these players who are playing for England, maybe haven't played enough one-day cricket, so we don't actually know that they're not the right team to pick anymore because we haven't seen them completely played.
But we've got evidence from other cricket. We've got evidence from other cricket that they are pretty good. Like, it's not a wild assumption to think that Johnny Bairstow would have got some runs at some point during this World Cup. But he
Josh Butler might have got more than 100 runs in the whole tournament. Ben Stokes would have been brilliant. There's a lot of.
I mean, great point. If you were going to have tomorrow an auction for an ODI team, and you could pick anyone like IPL style, Butler's going for big money. He's in the big category. Even now, even after this tournament, people are still picking Josh Butler. Like, he's not just bad at cricket. Something else is happening here. Maybe it's just a string of bad luck. I mean, like that's something we can contend. I would say in this game, I think India bowled pretty well, and I think England are at a bit of a low ebb. But I'm talking sort of more broadly across the tournament here. Like, you think at some point Butler would have cashed in against Sri Lanka.
I thought India were absolutely phenomenal. I thought they got so much right here, and I thought that Rohit's kind of batting as well. Jack, I think on Twitter you said that 87's worth more than a bunch of the hundreds that have been hit in this tournament. It was a fantastic innings.
It reminded me of that 100 he scored at Lord's in the Test series a few years ago, where the ball was doing all sorts, hooping around, and he just hung in there, and it was an incredible innings, and it was the same sort of thing.
And if we go full circle to touch on both those points, and the bigger theme about England being a house of cards when it comes to batting, Rohit himself after the game at the Man of the Match presentation. And I think it was kind of a deserved man of the match. Some people question that, but I thought we played really fucking well, to be honest. He said, I had to go into test match mode. Like, I had to change gears completely, and it was all about survival for a while. And then he put together a partnership with King Legend. He didn't call him King Legend. He called him KL, but in his head, he was thinking King Legend. and they got a score on the board. And that, in the context of this tournament, shows the difference between the mindset of these two teams and where they're at in terms of skill and capability. That Rohit Sharma, having been Mr. Intent for India's first 5 games, was able to recognise that this was not the pitch to do that, and he needed to knuckle down, get some runs. By far, in the Rohit pantheon of innings, far from his sexiest innings. In terms of runs scored in an innings in this tournament, it will be way down the list. But if you look at the value that he added in this game, it was exceptional. Like, it was one of the best innings of the tournament. One of the best innings of the tournament, I would say. Like, it was really good batting.
Yeah.
I think in terms of...
We'll leave it there, shall we?
and back to football. I also think that when you look at... I think go back to the kind of Butler point. Yeah, the guy, he's not been able to hit any runs, but that ball from Kuldeep Yadav today was called it. The redemption arc is complete, I think, for Kuldeep now.
It's complete when he wins the World Cup.
Well, he didn't lose the World Cup. I mean,
it will be complete in a few weeks once India have won the World Cup. That'll be the end point, I think, of the redemption arc.
I heard a couple of people say that this was the most complete bowling performance they can remember from an India side. Ross, you've mentioned Kuldeep there, but Bumrah was on a hat trick at one point. Shami was on a hat trick at one point. Jadeja chipped in with a stumping and an economy rate of 2.29. Not bad. Do you agree? Best Indian all-round bowling performance in a while.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair, and I think it must be so encouraging to be an India fan and kind of have those resources at your disposal, right? When Mohammed Siraj, who's probably been one of the best, he's probably been the top 3 ODI bowlers for the last couple of years. You are, and you're kind of carrying him a little bit in this lineup today. Like he was the least pivot. Like you're just like, that is amazing to have. Like what a luxurious position to be in. And I think the India team, say a couple of years ago, Hardik Pandya goes down injured, panic stations, big time. Like what's going to happen? They're kind of think like they're going to get selection wrong. They're going to not back their convictions and not going to have the confidence in what they're all about. Here, big game to kind of go through, and like, regardless of how rubbish England have been in this tournament, playing England is still going to be a big occasion. You saw what it meant to kind of Virat Kohli, right? He might have got a duck in this game, but every wicket, he was like, kind of the camera immediately pans to him, and he's like bright red, going, "Rah, yeah, we've got another one," running off like peak Monty Panesar, and then you've just got this, I don't know, this scariness about this India bowling lineup, and I just think, yeah, they just look absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, being able to say, oh yeah, Shami has it got a fifer? Then did he take 4 wickets today? Was it 4 in the end for Shami?
Yep.
Yeah, and
so how many games he played? He's right back up, right at the top of the chart.
and the fact that they've put Sky and they've kept him being aggressive. I thought Sky did well today as well, actually, because that's not a typical thing to kind of come in, and we've not really seen it too much from him in ODI cricket. But yeah, they haven't panicked, and that's scary for every other team because the only thing that normally gets in the way of India is the selectors.
Yeah, they're looking good. Max, there's a thing I think called the King World Cup. I think it's called the King World Cup, which is where you go the entire tournament without losing. I believe Australia have done it twice and India have done it once. India on course here. Do you think it's more likely that India do a King World Cup or that someone else wins the tournament?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's probably more likely that someone else wins the tournament because all it takes is one day, doesn't it? One day for South Africa to go balmy and score a bunch of runs, or one day for Australia to have a day out. But I mean, I think it's as good a chance as they're going to get in 50 years, I think, to complete a King World Cup. They're in such a good position just in terms of the team, the settledness, how well they're playing, home conditions as well, home crowd. But I think the thing about this game today, it's shown another sort of string to their bow, another facet of the game, and the way they can win. I was wondering about whether they could post a score. I mean, they didn't really post much of a score, but then came back and restricted England. I know it's only England, sure, but nonetheless, like you said, the bowling performance was really good, really tight, really impressive, and it helped England implode in the way they did. And it's another way of winning that we've seen, aside from just chasing down a score really comfortably. So that's another thing that will be really heartening, I think, for India and for the rest of this tournament. So yeah, once again, their rivals will be looking on with some trepidation, I expect.
They're not going to be looking at trepidation when Shreyas Iyer comes out to bat, though, are they?
Oh no, that's true.
I mean, it could be a completely different podcast. We were talking about Virat Kohli's brainless moment, and for all the runs he scored in this tournament. Yeah, and Shreyas is. I mean, it's sort of mystifying that the guy is an established international now, and actually with a pretty good record. But everybody knows you just bowl 2 bouncers and he hits one up in the air. Like it's bonkers. I mean, like how does he average 40 when everyone knows that? That I can't get my head around that. And it was right out of the Shreyas playbook to get out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is why I didn't really get as well. Like, why did he do that? Like, Ross, and you're
I just don't get it. And literally, like, the
You're
guy
shaking your head.
yeah, the guy's been billed as kind of just like, yeah, this guy is going to step up when kind of Kohli leaves the field. Like Shreyas is the person who we're going to rely on. It just astounds me, like this the lack of thought that goes into it, because he's got all the shots. But if you've got a weakness, like he's got such a poor record against it. I think his average is something like 13 against it or something like that. Like it's absolutely staggering. And as you say, like he is one of the established Indian players, but there's got to be a question mark around whether they should be playing someone like Ishan Kishan because they'd get kind of more value, I think, out of that. But yeah, what today did miss for me was Rishabh Pant not playing for it, because when he takes on the short
Would have been
ball,
traditional.
yeah,
It
when
would have
he
been
takes on the short
traditional.
ball, it goes everywhere.
Normally, when England get on top against India, or at least in the last few years, what happens is 40 for 4 becomes 200 for 5, and Pant has got 100 off 70 balls. So it was. I think the game did miss Pant, and I hear his recovery is going quite well, and he might be back in action in January. But if the game did miss
Dr. Ganguly.
anything else on this match at all? Throw it out there.
The fact that England have to fucking stay for the next month while this happens is
there's new jeopardy on the line, isn't there, Ross? Because the only thing possibly more embarrassing than England's performance this World Cup is the ICC randomly deciding that the top 7 now get through to the Champions Trophy, because they realised that nothing was worth watching for the next 2 weeks, so they needed to come up with some faux jeopardy for the remainder of the group stage. So England are in trouble.
Isn't that an incentive to just lose some matches?
Well, so
in all seriousness, it's like when to go back to football, Premier League podcast. It's like when a potential title challenger has to play in the Europa League, like Arsenal last year. Thursday nights in Bratislava, your right back gets injured, and you're just like, "What for this? Like, we don't even want to be here." Like,
well, just do what Spurs did, but they literally just like, "Yeah, we're not going to go to France to play against Rouen." They literally just didn't go. Yeah, we forfeited, haven't we? Oh God, never mind, eh?
Oh no. Anyway, yeah, I mean that is ridiculous. I will say that. I don't particularly. It's one of those things I don't really care enough about to rail against.
Also, it's the kind of thing that happens so often, it's not that surprising anymore, even though it's completely nonsense and ridiculous. I mean, we've just seen a competition where they randomly decided they were going to have a reserve day for one single game of a group stage to make sure it finished. So, when it comes to cricketing authorities changing rules halfway through things, it's not that surprising. But it's a really good opportunity for the Netherlands.
It is. Yeah. Well, they're going to beat England. So that's 3 wins. They could pick up 4 wins if they turn over Afghanistan in their last match. Like it's really opened up. Really opened up for them. And we'll be talking about them later in the show. Anything else before we can wrap up on the first?
No,
match?
India look very, very good, and I'm not going to be surprised if they win every single one of their games.
Yeah, here, I guess. Just before we wrap up on part 1, then. If you are watching on YouTube, if you're live, we've got a decent audience in, which is a real surprise after England get turned over by India. Do hit like and do hit subscribe. I think we're about 100 subscribers short of 14,000 on YouTube.
That's pretty good.
So if you're one of the people watching, if your name begins with a letter between A and Z, it's your turn to click like, click subscribe, get involved with the Cricket Podcast that way. And obviously, if you're on Spotify or iTunes, we'd appreciate a review. We've had quite a few in. Had a big rush, over 100 reviews on Spotify in the last month. And that has done wonders for our visibility, which is what this whole game's about. It's about England losing, us cashing in on that, and visibility. And you get that triangle correct, that's growth. Just a little insight. Just a little insight to the podcasting world there.
It's all about our GDP, isn't it? Gross domestic podcast. That's what we're calling ourselves on for this. It's all about growth.
Exactly. Let's take a break and we will come back. We should probably do Australia v New Zealand next, shouldn't we?
We should, yeah. We're back in 10 seconds, so stay live.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Alf Ederson, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast. That's goodbye, isn't it?
Yes. Goodbye.
What's hello in German? Who
Guten
knows?
Tag.
Hi.
Guten Abend.
Guten Tag. Good
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we're back and we're talking about Australia v New Zealand. Max, I'm guessing you've got a summary for this, but Ross is wearing black, which is the colour of New Zealand. So maybe Ross is going to throw in a curveball. Throw it out there.
I'm not.
I'm happy to take it away. So, Australia, New Zealand, the big news, of course, was that Travis Head was back. And boy, was Travis Head back. 109 off 67. He and David Warner absolutely pummeled New Zealand all over the place. 175 of 19 overs they were. I mean, that's we're talking T20 stats to open up the innings. But fortunately for New Zealand, Australia then decided to retreat into their shell with their test match middle order. Didn't even manage to go at a run of ball for the remainder. But then also, fortunately for Australia, they've got Glenn Maxwell and also Pat Cummins, who biffed some what turned out to be incredibly important runs at the end. 388, not even using their full complement of 50 overs. Looks like a bit of a task for New Zealand. But, I mean, how much credit do we have to give New Zealand here for nearly winning a game of cricket? Because they were so up against it. I think, the win vis for Australia throughout the game was basically like 80-90% from that opening, from about 5 overs in, really. Australia were comfortable favourites, but they just kept in touch the entire time. Even when they lost wickets, the next man came in, and obviously we'll get to Rachin Ravindra in a bit. But New Zealand just kept at it. They kept in touch, and they were, when you looked at where the scores were at various points, they were up with where Australia were. And it was those runs at the end from Pat Cummins ultimately that made the difference. And despite James Neesham's best efforts at the end and getting it down to 6 needed off the last ball to win, they just came up short. As much as we would have loved Mitchell Stark's 5 wides to have settled it. Jack, your hands up.
Yeah. Does James Neesham's mum even call James Neesham James?
No, I've just got the scorecard up and it says James Neesham, so that's what I've said. Jimmy.
Has he done something wrong?
The niche dog, 58 of 39. What a performance from him, but not quite enough. New Zealand, it's such a good effort, and even with that effort, they couldn't topple Australia. That rivalry, the Trans-Tasman rivalry, as we learned it was called the other day, or we're reminded it was called the other day, still very much favouring Australia. But what a game after a World Cup where we've been waiting for some close games, 2 coming along in double quick fashion. This one obviously has to take the biscuit as far as games of the World Cup goes so far. Jack, you're on mute.
Ross, like Harsha Bogle said, and in typical Harsha style, he said that Australia may have won the game, but New Zealand won our hearts. Do you agree?
That happens so often, doesn't it?
Is your heart won by the Kiwis on this occasion? They suffered the England, didn't they? They lost both the Cricket World Cup and the Rugby World Cup in one Saturday, just like England did the week before. But is the heart won? That's the important thing.
I think it's really difficult. I don't know anybody who actually hates kind of New Zealanders. Like, it's absolutely astounding. Like, when it kind of comes to it,
Australians.
Even then, they were just like, it's not hatred, is it? It's almost pity. So it's kind of like, sort of just the little brother. But I think ultimately, this New Zealand side have really got kind of, again, punching above their weight. I don't know why. I'm always surprised at how brilliant they do. And here it was, the chase was well on. And Max, you mentioned Ravindra. Like, that guy's just come out of kind of relative obscurity and have been absolutely amazing in here. And another century. Daryl Mitchell obviously always contributes. You were always in with a shout. I was kind of in a bar yesterday with my family, and we were watching the cricket. When Mitchell Stark bowled those 5 wides, I was just so excited. Someone captured it, well, my sister-in-law captured it, and I put it on Twitter. And I was so excited. I felt like a Kiwi fan. I was just like, "Come on, you can actually do this!" And that run out at the end of James Neesham,
that was very reminiscent of the World Cup as well, almost identical.
It was, to be fair, Josh English did a really good bit of wicket keeping for that, because I think Marnus got quite a lucky bounce. It was kind of the Jason Roy kind of bounce. There was the throw in, and there was a lot of parallels to be drawn between there and our boundary count win, as we get told. England's, this New Zealand side are going to be a handful. They're obviously going to get to the playoffs or the semi-finals, and they definitely can win 2 games. They definitely can. So I think it's the 4. I know it sounds ridiculous, but we are going to have some brilliant semi-finals in about 3 weeks' time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. Just 16 days away. It's going to be. Should
we develop a remainder of the World Cup group stage advent calendar? Have a little treat every morning.
Yeah, that would actually be quite good. Max, Mitchell Stark, his streak is over.
Yeah,
was it 21 World Cups?
21.
Yeah, in the 20s, like a bunch.
Yeah,
more World Cup games than you'd think. Someone would take a wicket in anyway. And he bowled like a bit of a drain. We've seen this in kind of every Australian match, haven't we? That one of the big 4, Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, and Zampa, seems to go round the park. Is this a concern for them, or is this just like the bowlers percolating before they reach the moment?
I think it's perfect from Australia. I think they've basically managed to work out a formula such that each individual bowler has an off day once. They get it out the way, and then by the end of the tournament, all the off days are gone. They're all firing, and you're in trouble as a batting side. I think, genuinely, it does more just say what will happen when none of them have an off day, because that will happen, and that's going to be troublesome. But yeah, every time they've had an off day, the other guys have picked up the slack, and I think that's the beauty of having such a powerful bowling attack. Zampa again, he was a little bit expensive, but everyone was, and those 3 key wickets in the middle are sort of what kept Australia ahead of the game at each point. Even though New Zealand remained in touch, those Zampa wickets were the ones that made sure New Zealand never got to a point where you thought, oh, this chase is actually definitely on. It was always, they could still do it, but it's unlikely, rather than they're actually genuinely going to do this. And those wickets were key. So I mean, it's just the all round qualities they have in that bowling lineup are really useful. And Glenn Maxwell's been really helpful as well.
I quite like that idea that one of them just has a bad day, gets it out of their system. It's a bit like amateur cricket, like when you're doing catching practice and someone drops an absolute clanger. Without a doubt, someone will shout, "Yeah, that's right, mate. Get it out your system."
Get it out the system. Yeah,
it's the same. It's the same premise.
You always like to think that there's a bit of amateurishness that you have in professional sports players, don't you?
And that is giving Mitch Marsham overs for no reason when Josh Hazelwood and Mitch Stark finished with nine overs being bowled.
Ross, the crowd at one point was they resurrected the Sachin chant, but this time for Rachin. It was good. I thought it was good to get an encore for that. And it's also nice that the Indian public in general have taken him to heart so well, isn't it? He really one of the breakout stars of the tournament, Rachin Ravindra.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and the fact that he contributes so brilliantly with the bat as well as being very handy with the ball is staggering, right? And there's a question mark here around, right? Well, how big is this guy actually going to become? Because I think what we see a lot of in the IPL auction is that regardless of the format, if you do well against India and you do well in India, then the money is going to follow, right? And so I think I can imagine that. Yeah, is he going to be brilliant in T20 cricket? Don't know. But is a handy option to have. And I can imagine some nice dollar signs coming his way, just like it happened with Carl Jameson when he performed very well against India, got himself kind of $1 million, and then decided not to be good anymore. So it was one of those things.
Timing. The timing is absolutely perfect as well, isn't it? A month out from the auction, like he couldn't have asked for a better situation to tee himself up for an IPL contract.
No, the only way is going to be if New Zealand make it to the final, or New Zealand play against India, and he hits 100 against India in that.
Bazillion pounds. They'll just have to take away the salary cap and just let people rip at Rachin Ravindra. That's what will happen. I think one of the things we're talking about this game, we focused probably a little bit on New Zealand, and it's always funny when one of the Australians melts down. Australia, though, 388 batting first, despite, Max, as you said, a fairly pedestrian middle order. Mitch Marsh, 36 off 51. Smith, 18 off 17. Marnus, 18 off 26. Going nowhere, any of them. 388, though. Travis Head, 109 off 67 balls in his return. Dave Warner, 81 off 65. What a tournament he's having. And Maxwell and Inglis and Cummins finishing it off.
Why is Labuschagne still in the team?
Right, I've got a theory on this.
Insane.
I'll answer that. I'll answer this, and then we can talk about how good Australia are in general. I think they didn't really know how good Head would be, so they wanted a little bit of insurance in case Head turned out to be hopelessly out of form.
If Head turns out to be his brother that they've accidentally sent on the plane or something like that. He's a professional cricketer.
No, I know, but he's
have his tread.
Yeah.
he's coming back. He's coming back from an injury. Like this is the best possible scenario. He's had a great week. I think he saw his daughter's first steps on like Wednesday. Got on a plane, landed 109 of 67 balls against New Zealand, 10 fours, 7 sixes. The guy's probably in the top 10 for sixes in the tournaments. That's absolutely bonkers performance. I don't know where I was going with this. I can't remember. I've been sidetracked a little bit. Australia are good, Max. They are good, aren't they? They're batting. They're growing. They're going to win the World Cup.
Well, everything's trending in the right direction, isn't it? It's to the moon, but it's GameStop style for Australia. But I mean, Travis Head and David Warner, that's an opening pair. That's what Australia's ODI. Well, their kind of their approach has been based on, isn't it? It's what their credentials, their approach to the game has been based on that fast start with Warner and Head. Head being injured has sort of messed with that a little bit. Mitch Marsh has moved up and he's had a couple of good games, but it's not quite come off every time. And then that pedestrian middle order has gone nowhere. That doesn't matter quite so much when you're 175 for none off 19 overs. And it's just a perfect example, really, of how important Travis Head and that fast start is to Australia in this lineup, and it's a really good sign for Australia as they kick on. But I mean, I understand what you mean about the Marnus Labuschagne sort of selection. I still can't believe they kept him in the side because it's ridiculous. But I didn't necessarily expect him to just come back after that break and immediately score 109, and he's ever since I called him forgettable, he has been anything but. So I'm going to take all of the credit.
It has been amazing how good Travis Head has been since you said that. Like he has been
literally the day after.
All formats, one of the best in the world.
Yeah,
like it's bonkers,
it's incredible.
Ross, you're George Bailey for a minute here. You get to select the next team, or Andrew McDonald, or Cummins, whoever picks a team. Labuschagne out. You've made your case on that. How do you fit Mitch Marsh in, and who else do you bring in to replace Marnus?
So I think it's a clear spot for the Stoin. I think there's no other person that they should be bringing in here. Like Marcus Stoinis, as you said, self-proclaimed best finisher in the world. Might not have the numbers to back that up or the performances to back that up, but it's all about bravado, especially when you're Australian.
I don't think he ever said that. I think he said he wanted.
He said he wanted.
Carry on. Carry on. Point of order.
You say potato. I say tomato. Right. Whatever. When
you make it up. I tell the truth.
I'm potentially slanderous. you make sure that I don't get arrested.
Yeah. Jack's got the lawyers in his ear.
Yeah. Don't get sued for libel. But I'd be bringing in Stoinis purely in the fact that one, I like seeing his oily muscles. I think that's a big plus for the Cricket World Cup. I think for the next 16 days of boring cricket, you have to have a bit of sex appeal of it. And the other part is that when you want the potential of fireworks, right? When Stoin can get going, so we can really, but that it just adds a little bit more potential, I think, to this lineup. And he's got a bit of a knack for taking wickets, and you'd rather see Stoinis bowl than seeing Marnus bowl. And you also want to be able to say to Mitch Marsh, like, you have to play Mitch Marsh. There's no question. Like, there shouldn't ever be a thing around, oh, we're not going to play him. But you want to see him batting like he was batting when he was opening. So you want to see him kind of being positive. You want to see him kind of taking those risks. And so he needs to have that freedom to do that. And I think having Stoinis down the order to biff a few is what you need.
Cool.
All out attack.
Absolutely cracking game of cricket. Fair play to the Kiwis. I think it was a really impressive effort to get that close. Fair play to Australia for getting 388 in the first place, I think, as well. And I like Zampa as well. I've been really impressed with him. Like, he flies under the radar a little because he went for quite a few runs, but those wickets are important. I like this Australian side. In a power ranking, I think I'd have them second to India. I think they're creeping ahead of South Africa.
Yeah,
despite getting absolutely hooned by the South Africans earlier in the tournament. Should we wrap up this segment and then we'll come back with
the headline act
3? But, I mean, the headline act, it's the Netherlands v Bangladesh and some previews. Netherlands v Bangladesh. Netherlands, ICC status now. I think that's going to be the full member status. Sorry, now that's going to be the headline discussion. I also want to give a little shout out to KS in the live chat, who says their screen color reminds me of Indian trains. I don't know what Indian trains are like, but the theme we've got going on apparently with Manscaped on the visual. Apparently that's what you're going on.
Yeah.
What you have going on in India as
now
well.
Defunct sponsorship that still remains on the
They still exist.
They
We
do.
have updated our branding. It's actually a good point. If anyone does want to sponsor the Cricket Podcast, this has been the most listened to, most watched month in the history of the podcast. And because our business development unit has, we had to fire them. They weren't bringing in enough business. We have no sponsor. So if you are interested in sponsoring us, do reach out, thecricketpod@gmail.com. And we'll do the other super chat as well. We had a super chat, which is almost as good as a sponsor. In fact, maybe better, actually. It's like the democratization of a sponsor from Akash Panchal. Go back to the first game. What do you think is the future of Joss Buttler? Ross, you can answer that really quickly, and then we'll do a break.
Yeah, I think his position is becoming is a risk. It clearly is a risk, and I think he'll be lucky to come away being captain for what happens next. I think this is ultimately disastrous, regardless of how much you can be a kind of a vibes cricket team and have Rob Key kind of king of the vibes, kind of making decisions based upon it. I think Matthew Mott's position ultimately becomes untenable, especially if England don't qualify for that Champions Trophy, regardless if you want to watch that or not, Jack. But Joss Buttler has been kind of trying to keep it all together. And unfortunately, has not been able to do that. And you can't come out in the media, regardless of what's happening behind the scenes or anything. You can't come out in the media and just be like, I don't know what's going wrong, lads. It's just as much of a mystery to me as it is to you. So, yeah.
It is a little bit Steve McLaren with the umbrella, isn't it? Like this whole
Wally with the brolly.
There really
with
is.
the brolly,
There is. Yeah.
It's I think it's a tough one. The only thing I'd say on that is that I'm not sure they can get rid of Joss Buttler as captain because of player power. I think they don't want to lose him as a player.
You're going to just be like, Soji, you're going to go for franchise cricket around the world.
Well, yeah, I don't think they can afford that. I think they really need to protect one of their key assets, just from a commercial point of view.
To argue with myself as well, do they really care about ODI cricket? Like this is also this has been.
Have you not been watching this World Cup?
But in terms of like that, on Football Manager, if we stay on the football, like every season, if you're playing in Europe, you've got squad bonuses, right? Your squad bonus for winning the league, winning a European Cup, or winning kind of a League Cup or a domestic trophy. On here, I reckon all hits are low. We don't care about ODI cricket in terms of the format, and actually the ramifications of it is actually Joss Buttler and Matthew Mott have won a T20 World title together, which was a massive thing. The Test team is doing amazingly, and actually you can't be brilliant at all three. Is kind of what they're forget for a second that New Zealand are good at all three, India are good at all three, and Australia are good at all three, etc. But maybe they just don't care, and they will just be like, yeah, do you know what? We'll strike that up and we'll pick a different team when we go to the West Indies later on in the year.
I think as well, just to add to that, it's kind of more fun being in the Pakistan bracket where anything can happen. Like, it must
Gives
be
you stuff to
boring.
talk about.
It must be really boring being an India fan and an Australia fan. It's been amazing, being an England fan the last few years. They've won things left, right, and centre. They invented Bazball. Yeah, what more could you ask for? They got thumps down under in Australia. That was a different change of pace, wasn't it? They lost in the West Indies when they played the backup team.
That's
Stuart
the thing.
Broad.
The glory of winning that World Cup, winning the T20 World Cup, and Bazball, none of that happens without the pain.
Exactly.
So you have to endure the pain to get the other side of
it. From an entertainment perspective, England and Pakistan, top tier. They're S tier in the rankings. Australia and India, way down. Bangladesh are, it's S tier, England, Australia. Then you've got Bangladesh. Then I would say the West Indies and Afghanistan. That's how I look at the cricket world in terms of drama. And it's
as we all know, everything's ranked on style, control, damage, and aggression.
Exactly.
Good reference.
Moral ashes retained. Moral World Cup pretty much in the bag. I think we would say just to round off a little bit of a segue there.
And historically, sarcasm goes down really well on YouTube. So look forward to the comments.
Exactly. We'll take a break and we're going to come back. Netherlands. I mean, amazing.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Alf Peterson. Fuck, I did it again. Guten Tag, everyone, and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast, where we're talking about the Netherlands. Not even the right word, is it, for the Netherlands?
No, it's not even the right language. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Does anyone know what hello is in Dutch? Because we've got another upset, Ross.
We do indeed. And we had Netherlands playing against Bangladesh. And again, I thought going into this, Netherlands were favourites. I think we're all the bandwagon. The bandwagon is dead. Like the wheels came off. Like it was over. Netherlands here decided, do you know what? We're just going to make a big statement. They won the toss. They decided to bat. They had Wesley Barazi come in for kind of his random game in the World Cup, and he did well. And you saw again a team who decided they don't really like hitting runs with their opening batsmen. They like to leave it for kind of like 6, 7, 8 typically, and they did really, really well. I think 2-9 on the pitch that they were playing on actually was a decent enough total, and they showed again that they've got that kind of grit and determination to give themselves a chance. Bangladesh, I think it's pretty fair to say, underperformed with the bat. I think it's pretty fair to say 1-4-2, and it wasn't a case of them going, oh, this pitch is unplayable, this kind of stuff. It was poor batting. I think it was, again, good execution of game plans from the Netherlands, and especially as some of their batters around. And I think people have been increasingly impressed. I think when we've talked before about teams who maybe don't have kind of the star quality that some of the others do, you have to do the basics right, and you have to do them really well, and then you have to find where you're going to get your advantage from. And the Netherlands have cracked it here, and they well and truly banged the bus of Bangladesh. So a resounding victory, and ultimately Shakib Al Hassan and the Bangladesh kind of management, etc. We think England are in tatters. Bangladesh have embarrassed themselves so much in this tournament, so it's unfortunate.
They've been dismal. They've been
They
absolutely
even lost
dismal.
to England.
How bad do things have to be?
Like, they're probably looking back on that and kicking themselves. That could have been the second win they needed to qualify for the Champions Trophy. Oh man, Max, Netherlands, ICC full member status. What do you think?
I'd imagine there's a whole lot they need to get sorted before they can do that in terms of infrastructure and the things they need to put in place to be able to qualify for it. But I mean, is there a halfway house between associate member and full status like that? Because maybe that's something that they should think about putting in place. But yes, what? What do you want?
Right, I'm gonna jump in here, and I'm
Mm.
gonna say, looking at Afghan cricket and Netherlands cricket side by side.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
What exactly is the thing that holds back the Netherlands? What that they
Well,
might
Afghanistan
not be able
shouldn't
to
have full
play?
member status because they don't have a women's team. So,
Well, okay, the Netherlands do. Shane
Yep.
Dietz, friend of the pod, just retired, didn't he, or just moved on from head
yes,
coach
but
there.
he
So
was in
we
charge of
know
that.
that's
Yeah.
the thing. We know that's the thing. Like, what do they lack?
I
Like, they
mean,
don't
there's
play a bit of
domestic. I
four-day
mean,
cricket.
I don't know what the domestic structure of the Netherlands is like, but at the moment, obviously, you have all these Netherlands players. Not all these Netherlands players, but people like Colin Ackerman and Paul van Meekeren who play their domestic cricket in the UK, and they'll be there's the overseas thing to think about, and having the sort of the county structure or the domestic structure set up. So there's probably some things to sort out there, but why not? I mean, they're better than Bangladesh, so they should be up there. They've been incredible this World Cup. I've been so impressed with the way they've played cricket, the way they've thought about cricket, the way they've approached games. They've done it thoughtfully. They've got plans for everything, and they would. I mean, yeah, Bangladesh were a disaster in this game, and they've been a disaster in this World Cup. But they're still a full cricketing nation, and the Netherlands have come and they've pumped them. Like they've battered them. And once again, they've recovered from they were 4 for 2, and they've recovered. Like they bat so deep.
They've embraced the sacrifice, Max. That's what I think of this.
They have. That's the key. I continue to be impressed, and to bounce back like they did from that defeat against Australia. Obviously, that was an absolute hammering, and they're they're back. They're back again against Bangladesh. They keep fighting. I've just got so much. So much time for the Netherlands and the way they've approached this World Cup. They're not just here. They said at the start they wanted to reach the semi-finals. We laughed, but they're not here just to make up the numbers. They've come in. They've beaten South Africa. They've beaten Bangladesh. They've put proper shifts in against big sides, Pakistan and New Zealand, and run them reasonably close and stayed in the game. And you absolutely have to think about the pathway for them to get to the next level. It's just a question of what that is.
Max mentioned earlier that Ravindra is going to be a popular man at the IPL auction. Could we see a Dutch player going to be picked up for one of the IPL teams?
Seems very unlikely. The most likely way that would come in would be someone who's got pace bowling who can smack it. So you're looking at people like Van Beek and Bastilleda, who would possibly be the massive outside bets because they've got that skill set that is a bit rarer in the IPL. And maybe if it got to 12 teams, one of them would sneak in, but I think it's very unlikely. We also, this is again one day cricket.
I'm trying to think of what Dutch players might have played. Dirk Nennes, maybe.
Oh, well, he did play, but I think he might
Yeah.
have been Australian at that point.
At the time.
Yeah. So I remember he changed. Van der Merwe was pretty good at the SA20, wasn't he? So
Very good, yeah.
There's some.
We have one a champion, isn't he, for the Sunrisers?
Yeah, I mean the Holland again, or the Netherlands. I don't know. In football they're Holland, aren't they? Maybe it's a football themed podcast, so maybe we should just make them Holland for a little bit. Holland once again, really impressive. One of the things I thought was brilliant about this, to be honest, was that they got absolutely thumped by Australia a few days ago, and I think we said after that, like it's for players who are amateur, that's probably a harder thing to take than for a player who's professional and plays 150 cricket matches a year and sometimes gets beaten. Like I think if that happens, you develop a resilience. Like even the best teams, India wins 70% of matches. They lose a lot. You're losing a lot of games if you play 100 matches a year or 150 matches a year, and you're losing 70% of those cricket matches. That's not really the case for the Netherlands. Like a walloping by 300 runs really must have hurt. So to come back, not just beat Bangladesh, but like comprehensively outplay them. Like it wasn't close. They absolutely destroyed the Tigers. To the extent there were fans in the crowd, weren't there, with the sign saying it's with Bangladesh, it's always the next World Cup.
Yeah, I've got a lot of time for that.
Yeah, it was good gallows humor from them.
Yeah,
I do think for effectively part-time players or for a bunch of guys, of whom a fair few are part-time players, really, really, really impressive from the Netherlands. And that's my main takeaway from this. Probably the story of the tournament for me so far is how good the Netherlands have been.
Yeah, and if they can, nab another win from somewhere and get themselves into the Champions Trophy, I mean that again would be absolutely huge for Netherlands cricket. I mean they'll be participating at the expense of one of the top 8 teams in the world, probably, and it's just another feather in their cap and another step. I mean, it'll be really interesting to sort of see what the Netherlands Cricket Board and sort of the Cricket Association have planned, because maybe full status might not be in their interests. Just concentrating on the white ball stuff and being as good as they can at that might be more likely what they want to look at. And that's why I sort of say maybe there needs to be a different kind of full member status that you can have with the ICC that doesn't involve Test cricket, because I mean we all know what the world of Test cricket is like, and if Bazball doesn't save it soon, then and it'll be going the same way as the One Day World Cup, which it's obviously it's the last one, as we've all heard so much of.
Yeah, I think that probably brings us to a close on the cricket matches over the weekend. Ross will give you an opportunity to give us any last words, and then we've got about 5 minutes to preview a couple of matches.
No, just let's not waste any more time on Bangladesh. They've wasted enough of our time.
Cool. Also, in the Netherlands, I've got 3 more matches. We said that win one of those. Afghanistan, potentially winnable. England, definitely winnable.
Genuinely winnable,
yeah. And then India, which is maybe not so good, but there's a chance there. Tomorrow we've got Afghanistan v Sri Lanka. Max, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is actually one of the few games that has some interest, isn't it, left? Because both of those sides are sort of in with a shout of maybe an outside bet of making it through. If, New Zealand, for example, lost their last few games, which could happen. They've got Pakistan and South Africa on the way, haven't they? So they've got a couple of tricky games to play. So I'd be quite interested in this one. I think I quite fancy Sri Lanka now after watching them dispose of England in the way they did, and Angelo Matthews back.
Retired. He's retired.
He's retired.
Yeah, he only came back for the England game.
Just now the England game. Imagine that. But yeah, no, I like Sri Lanka. I'm going Sri Lanka purely on gut feel.
I think that's a nice idea. Kamira is back for them, isn't there? Kumara went down with a mild side strain between the end of the last match and now.
How
and
convenient.
Kamira has come back. Maybe he could be their knight in shining armor, Ross, to lead them to an improbable semi-final appearance.
Yeah, I think this is one of those pieces for Sri Lanka. They've been able to bat, right? I think Sri Lanka they've done reasonably well, and I think that unfortunately for them, they kind of lost Hasaranga, and I think they could have maybe not been a force at this World Cup, but they would have been asking some more questions of teams. That said, I think Afghanistan have played some really good cricket under Jonathan Trott. What?
No, carry on. No, I was going to interject with something stupid, but carry on.
Okay, fine. And I think Afghanistan, I think they'll put up a reasonable. They'll have a lot of confidence as well, right? This is if they are to kind of drink from the Pakistan well, then this could be a complete lottery in how they perform. Kind of the game plan goes out the window, etc. But if they stick to their strengths and they actually show a bit of resilience, and Max, I think you said on the last podcast, like everything went right for their batting unit in the last game. That's probably not a guarantee with this time round. But again, you play to their strengths. I think they need to pick Noor Ahmed, regardless of kind of what the surface is saying, etc. Just play to that. I know Fazal Farooqi is a good player to have, but I just think that their spin bowlers just are just a little bit better. So I think it's going to be actually a good little ding dong this game, and I'll back Afghanistan turning over Sri Lanka, as they've got more to play for.
Well, as for the deciding vote, I'm going to go with Afghanistan as well. I think it's their tournament. Before we preview the last, should we do through to Wednesday? Last couple of games. We just want to remind people that we're 100 subscribers on YouTube away from 14,000. So if you're listening to this, you're liking it, and there's quite a few people still involved, and who'll listen to it later, of course. Click subscribe. What's it going to cost you? Nothing.
Cricket's a game of miles, though, and we want to hit them.
Pakistan v Bangladesh. The only thing on the line here really is qualification for the Champions Trophy. Max, Pakistan, obviously they haven't got that to play for. Will that motivate Bangladesh to finally do something in this tournament?
Oh no, they're so bad. Even Pakistan won't lose to Bangladesh. Even
Cool.
England beat Bangladesh. I mean, Bangladesh are in a state, aren't they? Like some of their players as well, individually, like haven't looked like they've done too badly. Like some of the bowlers have bowled all right, but I mean, there's just no real batting to speak of, is there? In there, I can't see a way for Bangladesh with this one. But then again, it's Pakistan, so there's always that chink of light, isn't there, when you're playing Pakistan? But I can't see them turning them over.
No, I agree. Ross, I'm not even going to give you the option to talk about that one. I think it's such a foregone conclusion. Finally, Wednesday is New Zealand v South Africa. Some jostling going on in the top four to avoid playing India in the semis, I reckon. Who's your money on, Ross?
Who did you say it was? South Africa versus New Zealand, you say?
New Zealand, yeah.
Well, that's going to be one hell of a game, and I think you are right in terms of the jostling for position around playing India, but New Zealand have turned them over before, right? There's history there, and kind of the bottle nature sometimes happens, and it's in the semi-final. So maybe they want to play him in the semi-final. Don't want to leave it to the big occasion where they're playing in the Modi Dome in front of 130,000 home supporters. So it's going to be quite interesting. What is good here is you're going to see kind of two contrasting approaches, I think, and they're both quite well matched. I think to deal with that, my view would be that South Africa that South Africa would do them, I reckon.
What happens, and this is a realistic scenario, Max, what happens if the Cricket World Cup final in the Modi Dome is South Africa v New Zealand?
We laugh, and we laugh.
There's a lot of empty seats.
And there are a lot of empty seats.
And the echo of our laugh reverberates around 130,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, it could happen. It'll be interesting to see. But I mean, this game, actually, I think possibly a bit more riding on it than it looks. New Zealand have lost 2 on the bounce now. One was against India, sure, and the other one was against Australia, where they put in an unbelievable effort to try and chase the runs down. But if they then go and lose to South Africa on Tuesday, they've lost three in a row, and they've got 2 games left. And suddenly, there's a bit more of a chink of light again for an unlikely qualification for Sri Lanka or
England
or Afghanistan. Sri Lanka as well, because Sri Lanka play New Zealand in the final game, so there could end up being something on the line there. Which
this is how they did it last time. In the last World Cup, they lost to everybody in the top 4 besides themselves.
Yeah.
Or did they get a rain off maybe against India? I think they got a rain off against India and lost to Pakistan, who finished 5th. But they beat the bottom 5, and that was good enough. So the New Zealand method would tell us that
it's
they're
fine.
going to lose this game, but they will beat Sri Lanka in the final match and qualify.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible. But I think it does add a little bit to it. But I do fancy New Zealand to come through, actually. Just with the way they played against Australia, I think I'm sort of that much more impressed by what they can do. I didn't think they necessarily had the firepower to compete with that kind of total, but they showed that they do. South Africa are a similar sort of side with the bat, possibly with a bit less depth. So I like New Zealand for this one. I'm gonna go their way.
Fair shout. Just to round off the show, we had one more super chat from B, who said, "Do you think Joss should open the innings for England?" Let's finish off on England. Final thoughts on that, Ross. Do you think Joss should come in?
He can't hit any runs at 5, can he? So why don't we let's give it a go?
Max,
why not?
Has he even ever done it? There seems to be a thing that loads of people keep asking at the moment: is should Joss Buttler open for England in 50 overs? Because obviously he does it in the T20s, but I don't think he's ever done it for England in the 50 overs. So I mean, I don't think there's any reason to do it. I don't think it would make sense. I think that's far more wrong with this England side than whether or not Joss Buttler's opening the batting. So it's a no from me.
Just mix it all up. Just mix it all up. We just like right.
We've lost. Positions out of a hat. Why don't we also pick out first shot out of a hat as well?
Yep, shot
roulette
to
win the season.
Yeah, England are a shambles. I mean, like, they can do what they want. It doesn't matter. The wheels are off, and we don't
They
have to
are.
worry about that anymore. Like it's over. Right, Cricket Podcast is over too for this episode. I think we'll be back on Wednesday. Might be Tuesday. We forgot to plan again. See ya. Bye bye.